Black Friday is here, and Pandora Jewelry is offering up to 40% off store-wide and site-wide now through December 2nd.
Explore jewelry designed to last beyond the season, from classic charms to modern rings, bracelets, earrings, and more. Whether you're holiday shopping or treating yourself, now's the perfect time to find something special.
Shop at Pandora.net or your local Pandora store. Exclusions apply.
No, it's not too soon to start holiday shopping. Ulta Beauty's early Black Friday event is happening now through November 22nd. Shop $10 beauty minis from brands like MAC and Too Faced. Take 30% off Lancome and Touchland fragrances and body mists. With new offers dropping every week, our associates can help you find the perfect gifts. Head into Ulta Beauty today to shop our early Black Friday event. Ulta Beauty. Gifting happens here.
The Pinellas County investigators started looking into every angle of Michael Lepniewski's life. They learned about his ties to Opal's neighborhood, his criminal record, his family, and so on. But there was a lot of stuff they couldn't dig up without talking to the suspect directly, so they decided it was time to pay him a visit. On Thursday, January 26, 2023, Detective Thomas Lane and Detective Ron Chalmers flew to Stennis International Airport in Mississippi and drove to Waveland. At 11:56 a.m., they knocked on the door of the house where Lepniewski was staying, and Lepniewski himself opened it, holding a knife. "Hey, buddy," said Ron Chalmers. "How are you doing, sir?" Lepniewski said, "Hello." Chalmers said, "How are you? Are you Michael?" Lepniewski said, "I am Michael." Chalmers said, "Hey, Michael, I'm Ron. How you doing, buddy? Making lunch?" Lepniewski said, "Just making Egg McMuffin or whatever." Chalmers said, "Oh, okay." And Lepniewski said, "What's up?" Chalmers said, "Hey, I'm from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. This is Tom here. You're not in any trouble or anything like that, but we were hoping you had a couple of minutes to look at some pictures, help us out with an old cold case. We actually were just driving by on our way to New Orleans, saw you were just off I-10. We were hoping you could show you some pictures. We're trying to identify an old neighbor of yours from an old case. Have you got a couple of minutes? Can I show you some pictures?" Lepniewski says, Yeah, come on in." At this point, Lepniewski told the detectives, though, that there was someone else in the house, an elderly woman he cared for who was asleep. I'm going to address this situation a little later. For now, the detectives were happy to have a reason to keep things outside for safety's sake. So they suggested they speak in the yard, and all three went and stood near the attached garage. Detective Chalmers used a large curbside waste can as a desk, probably the very same one that Waveland officers had lifted Lepniewski's trash from. They made chit-chat about the house, where the detectives should go for lunch after, how Lepniewski quit drinking, and how he now needs reading glasses in order to see the photos they wanted to show him. Yeah, getting old's a bitch, and so on. Let me just say here that despite the banter, Lepniewski was visibly very nervous. It was clear to the detectives that when he heard Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, he recognized that they were from a jurisdiction in Florida where he had had significant contacts, and that they had traveled quite a distance to come talk to him. This is from Detective Chalmers' report, quote, "When I visited Mr. Lepniewski, he appeared very concerned that I was visiting him from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office in Florida. Mr. Lepniewski made several references to the fact I was from Pinellas County and referred to himself as a suspect as I was leaving," end quote. All right, back to the conversation. Lepniewski says, "All right, let's go over the pictures and stuff." And Chalmers says, "All right, buddy." Lepniewski says, "Okay." Chalmers says, "It'll take you about 3 minutes is all, then we'll get out of your hair." Lepniewski says, "All right, there you go, cheaters," and he puts glasses on. Lepniewski says casually, "I haven't been to Pinellas County in forever." Chalmers says, "Like I said, you're not in any trouble, but do you remember living on 56th Avenue North when you were a kid?" Lepniewski says, "Oh yeah, it was all hell in that place." Chalmers says, "Was it really?" Lepniewski says, "Yeah, we had 6 kids and it was terrible." Lepniewski went on to say that he remembered living on 56th Avenue North, although he couldn't remember the house number. He was able to describe the location and color of the house, which was pink, and the driveway configuration of the home. Detective Chalmers showed him an aerial shot of the neighborhood, and he was able to identify his childhood home on the map. But Lepniewski's not dumb. He realized very quickly that he needed to try to separate himself from this neighborhood where a murder had taken place. He basically started claiming that he didn't live on that block anymore in 1987, the year they told him the cold case dated from. His dad and stepmom had moved out of the house in '86, he said, which was true. And he never went back to the neighborhood because he said repeatedly there was nothing there for him anymore. Lepniewski basically said he burned his bridges with his father and was forced to move out of the house in 1985. This was because Lepniewski became involved in a sexual relationship with his stepmother, Deborah. Yes, you heard that right. She was 33 and he was 14 or 15 at the time. The two of them were nabbed by Pinellas County deputies on May 30th, 1985 in a wooded area near the Bay Pines boat ramp, laying naked on the grass behind their vehicle. Lepniewski explained this situation to the detectives. He said, quote, "I wasn't allowed back in that house. My dad would have shot me because of that bad incident there, so I didn't go back on that street." Chalmers says, "What bad incident?" And Lepniewski says, "My stepmother incident thing. Me and her kind of had a thing. Then my dad went crazy. He was drunk all the time, so he went crazy. So when I was trying to protect her, she was trying to protect me, and we ended up running. We ended up in Ohio, then down in Miami, and then somehow ended up back in St. Pete. And then it all went south." Lepniewski said his relationship with his stepmother created a hostile relationship with his father. It has to be said that many people feel that Lepniewski exaggerated the bad blood between him and his dad. He said it was well known that his father wanted to kill him for his relationship with his stepmother. Lepniewski told the detectives, "It was well known my dad had a bullet with my name engraved on it." And for that reason, he said he avoided his father and the neighborhood of 56th Avenue North. He said he hadn't been in the area since the time prior to his father and Deborah's mid-1986 divorce. So as you can hear, Lepniewski was doing his best to create a lot of distance between the neighborhood where Opal was killed in early 1987 and himself. But then Lepniewski admitted under questioning that he did return to the neighborhood after he was placed on probation for an arrest related to a stolen motorcycle. This was in August of 1987. The detectives wanted to turn the conversation back to Opal, and they employed a ruse to get information out of Lepniewski without directly confronting him about his role in the murder. They basically told him that they were trying to figure out the identities of some people who had lived next door to his family home. The canvassing detective back in 1987 had learned that there were people in and out of that house all the time and possibly an underage girl living with an adult male. But they had failed to get their names, and now the detectives wanted to try to track them down. They started to ask Lepniewski the names of people in the neighborhood, and they showed him some photos. Chalmers says to him, "I'll be honest with you, you're one of the few people that Tom and I have found that's still alive from the area, and so that's kind of why we're here talking to you. I'm trying to identify a next-door neighbor that lived next door to your parents' house or next to your house. So I'll let you look at this report, and this is why we're here. So one of the neighbors by the name of Roy, do you remember Roy and his wife Barbara?" Lepniewski says no. Chalmers says, "All right, they talked about having some issues at two houses in the neighborhood, right? Talked about there being lots of foot traffic at 4636 and 4598 56th Avenue. They got people in and out at all times of the days. People had been to 46367 7 times, unknown problems." Detective Chalmers calmly moved on. His report says, "I showed Mr. Lepniewski 6 photographs of Opal Weil and provided him with her name, spelling her last name." Lepniewski says, "Okay, but I don't recognize her." Chalmers says in his report, quote, "I explained that Ms. Weil would walk around the neighborhood every morning and every afternoon for several years. I asked Mr. Lepniewski if he ever saw her walking in the neighborhood and if he ever talked to her. Mr. Lepniewski told me no. Mr. Lepniewski then volunteered, 'No, they didn't want to talk to us. We were the trouble kids.' I showed Mr. Lepniewski several photographs of Miss Weil's residence taken during the homicide investigation in 1987. When I showed Mr. Lepniewski the pictures, he told me, 'I've never been to there.' I asked Mr. Lepniewski if he had ever been to Ms. Weil's residence, and he told me no." Lepniewski volunteered that that side of the neighborhood, Opal's side, was primarily old people, and he had absolutely no reason to go there. He stuck to the east side of the neighborhood. His friends lived to the east, the school was to the east, the pond he would visit was to the east, and the little store he would frequent was to the east. There was no reason for him to be down in the area of Ms. Weil's residence, he insisted. Detective Chalmers asked Lepniewski whether he remembered hearing about a murder in the neighborhood. He said no. He said, "I moved out of the area prior to that homicide. I didn't know anything about it." Chalmers said, "So did you ever go back over to that street after your parents got divorced?" Lepniewski said, "No, I don't have any business over there." Chalmers said, "Nothing?" Lepniewski said again, "There weren't good memories over there." Chalmers said, were there any of your friends who, now with the benefit of the passage of time, got into any serious trouble that we can look at? Lepnewski says everybody was crooked. Chalmers says, yeah, but serious trouble, murder, rape, anything like that over the years that you heard about? Lepnewski says, I don't know. I know that a lot of people was doing crazy stuff. I didn't do it. I'm a chicken shit, you know. I sent people to go do it for me, you know. Chalmers says, go do what? Lepnewski says, go get the weed. This is from Detective Chalmers' report. At the conclusion of our conversation, I thanked Mr. Lepnewski and began walking to our vehicle. Mr. Lepnewski said to me, well now, I really, really hope you guys find your guy. I don't like being the suspect. I told Mr. Lepnewski that I had told him before that he was not a suspect and that he was not in trouble. Lepnewski responded, I'm all weirded out now. This is like a TV show. I'm serious. Chalmers says, they're going to have a lot better looking people than you, me, and Tom if this is a TV show. I can tell you that for sure. Lepnewski says, well, anyways. And Chalmers says, all right. And Detective Lane says, all right. And they all say, thank you much for your time, Michael. And they leave. The detectives left the house at 12:33 p.m. They told Lepnewski they were headed straight to St. Louis, so he would not anticipate them coming back with an arrest warrant. But now that Lepnewski had denied even knowing Opal, much less being in or anywhere near her house, they knew he had no legitimate reason to have left his hairs at her crime scene. So they applied for and obtained an arrest warrant for the charge of murder for Michael Lepnewski.
Get caught in the holiday spotlight with Saks Off Fifth, the season's best deals with up to 70% off McQueen, Versace, Valentino, Stuart Weitzman, and more. Wrap yourself in designer finds straight off your wish list. Your mission, outshine at every event and outsmart your budget. From entrance-making party looks to festive day-to-night styles, every holiday outfit is a conversation starter. Whether you're hosting or toasting, Saks Off Fifth has all the must-haves to make your holiday lineup sparkle at prices that feel like a gift. Shop Saks Off Fifth for everyone on your list with the ultimate gift guide to suit every style and budget. It's the only shopping accomplice you need this season. From stocking stuffers and cozy surprises to treats for yourself, gifting has never been so easy. With arrivals dropping weekly, holidays are the perfect time to score big. And if anyone asks how you pulled it off, just confess. You got it at Saks Off Fifth. Visit SaksOffFifth.com or a Saks Off Fifth store near you today.
Black Friday at Abercrombie Kids is here with 40% off everything.
And iHeart listeners are getting an extra 15% off with code IHEARTAF.
This is your time to shine and finish holiday shopping on sale. Shop in the app, online, and in stores.
40% off everything valid in stores and online November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in U.S. and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount. Use code IHEARTAF to get an additional 15% off everything in stores and online at checkout from November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in U.S. and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online.
Every story begins somewhere. For your child, it could begin with a Guardian bike, built right here in the USA, engineered for safety and designed for confidence. Kids of all ages are learning to ride in just one day. No tears, no frustration. It's why Guardian is America's favorite kids bike and the New York Times and Wirecutter's top pick 3 years in a row. This holiday season, give the gift that's safer, smarter, and built to last. Visit GuardianBikes.com to save up to 40% on all bikes, plus a free accessory bundle worth over $100.
There were several reasons that the detectives did not want to have a confrontation with the suspect inside the house where he was staying. Lepnewski was residing with an elderly woman named Eliane K., whom he was not related to. And in a dispute documented by the Waveland PD on January 31st, 2020, police had responded to the home where Eliane reported that she had asked Lepnewski to leave. He refused and became irate. Eliane said Lepnewski poured gasoline on the floor of the home and held up a lighter, threatening to light her house on fire with her in it if she kicked him out. Further, way back in December of 1986, Lepnewski had written a letter threatening suicide and was Baker acted. The point was, there was not zero evidence that Lepnewski might be suicidal. Because he was living with this elderly woman, police did not want to confront him at the house and risk him harming her and himself. So they came up with a ruse. I can't help it, I love these, especially when the suspect is squirrely as Lepnewski was. This was all on the same day as the interview at Lepnewski's home. It was getting toward evening and getting dark. The detectives realized that Lepnewski was not going to leave the house that night and they needed to draw him outside. So Detective Chalmers texted Lepnewski, who had told him he would answer texts but not phone calls. The text said, Hi, Michael. This is Ron Chalmers. Hey, we're at dinner and I can't find my debit card. I'm worried it fell out getting out of the car where I gave you my card. Can you please look for it where I parked? Don't make a bunch of charges on it if you find it. I'll come through town on Monday to pick it up. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Please let me know, otherwise I need to call the bank. Thanks, man. At 8:01 p.m., Detective Chalmers received the following text from Lepnewski. It said, "Definitely it's not at the house." At 8:02 p.m., Detective Chalmers responded, "No, I dropped my stuff getting out of the car. I'm walking out to make sure it's not in my car now, too." At 8:03 p.m., Lepnewski wrote, "We're good, I'll look outside." Chalmers responded, "Thanks, bro." This from the report, quote, "During my text conversation with Mr. Lepnewski, I could hear the surveillance units broadcasting that Mr. Lepnewski would exit the home a few steps, but then would return to the home and look out the windows. Mr. Lepnewski obtained a flashlight, but again, only stepped out a few steps from the front door before returning to the residence and closing the door." At 8:24 p.m., Detective Chalmers received another text from Lepnewski. It said, "It's dark. I didn't see it with my bright light. I'll look in the AM. No, I won't spend anything. No worries. I had enough shock and surprise. But I will make sure it's to you if I find it. Sorry." At 8:31, Detective Chalmers sent the following text to Lepnewski. "Hey, do you mind if I call the local cops to come look with their bright flashlights? I'm concerned if I lost it somewhere else, it's getting sold on the dark web, ha ha. No, seriously though, I don't want to turn it off if it's out there. It takes like a week and a half to get a new one." There was no response to this text, so at 8:40 p.m., Chalmers sent a follow-up text saying, "Or I can drive back. It's only 45 to 50 minutes to where we are. I know where I was when I dropped it." Well, Lepnewski did not want a bunch of local cops showing up at his house with flashlights, and he also did not want Chalmers and his partner showing up at his house again. At 9:14 p.m., the surveillance units let Detective Chalmers know that Lepnewski had walked out of the residence and was moving away from the front door. They swooped in. Lepnewski was confronted by members of the Waveland PD and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office and taken into custody without incident in the front yard. Once he was in cuffs, Detective Chalmers, who was not in St. Louis, approached and told him he didn't want to talk to him in the cold, but they would go to the station and have a conversation over a cup of coffee without handcuffs. Lepnewski said, "You could have just called me. I would have come down to the station to talk to you." I don't think he was really getting it. They put Lepnewski in the back of the SUV, and Detective Chalmers sat in the back with him. Once at the Waveland police station, Chalmers placed Lepnewski in an interview room and read him his rights. He agreed to waive them and speak with the detectives. They talked about when the detectives visited him at his home earlier. Lepnewski said, "Well, yeah, I was a little freaked out when you showed up from Pinellas County." Chalmers said, "Why were you freaked out?" Lepnewski said, "Because what the hell are you doing up here and for what? I left that shit behind. When you come up talking to me, it's the same thing like I told everybody already. I told them you're coming back." Chalmers said, "Why? Why did you think we were coming back?" Lepnewski says, "Because the TV shows show you coming back." Chalmers says, "No, Michael, this is real life." The detectives and Lepnewski then discussed his 1987 arrests, which I will get into later. These arrests placed him in Pinellas County around the time of Opal's murder and afterwards. He remembered these arrests, but claimed not to remember anything at all about the murder of an old lady in his neighborhood. Detective Chalmers presented a scenario to Lepnewski. He said, quote, "What I think may have occurred here is I think you might have gone into that house to look for something of value. And I think that this lady may have heard you, and I think there may have been a bit of a struggle. And like I said, I don't even know if you knew that she was dead. Maybe you pushed her down and she's a frail little old lady and you didn't even know she was dead until much later. Or if you ever knew that she'd died. Or the opposite side of that could be true too, Michael. Maybe you broke into the house to go have sex with this woman, to rape this woman. I don't know. And that's what we're here to try to find out. But I can tell you this, that I have definitively identified you as being the person responsible for this through genetic DNA evidence. There is no mistake. And that evidence is tied 100% to her death. And so if we're going to come in here and try to talk in circles about how it's not you, then I shouldn't waste your time and you shouldn't waste mine. But if you want to take responsibility for your actions, if you want people who are going to make decisions about your future, to make informed decisions knowing what happened to Michael 36 years ago and who Michael became as a result of that, so that they can make informed decisions about your future, then that's what I can offer to you. That's what I'm here to find out. Because, Michael, you haven't been in a lot of trouble in your adult life. Lepnewski says, "Sir, I'm not a killer. I don't kill people." Lepnewski feigned surprise that his DNA was found in that lady's house. He said no one liked his family on the street, suggesting they were the black sheep of the neighborhood, meaning there's no way he was in her house. Lapnewski continued to claim that he didn't know Opal and that he avoided his father and the entire neighborhood of 56th Avenue North. There was nothing in that neighborhood to go back to, he said. I had no business over there. There was no reason. And that's not a good memory. That's not even a reason to go back to that street. We didn't talk to anybody on that street. I wouldn't even know if these people have $5 or 15 cents because they didn't talk to the trash down the road, the uncontrollable children that were not being parented right. Lapnewski reiterated that he avoided the area because he was afraid his father would shoot him. Let me interrupt here and say that when Detective Chalmers interviewed Lapnewski's brother Charles, Charles denied the bad blood between father and son. Charles said that after his brother returned to the area after the stepmother incident, their father bought Michael a car and new clothes. None of this family drama really matters, except in that the statements of others undermined Lapnewski's assertion that he never again returned to Opal's neighborhood after leaving in 1986. He did, and now we know what happened when he did. Detective Chalmers continued to press, pointing out that it would be better for Lapnewski to own up to what he'd done. The detective pointed out that Lapnewski's state of mind when he entered the home mattered in terms of intent. Chalmers said, quote, "Because you did this, and if you say what you did was dumb, then you're dumb because you did this. And you can dance around all you want and pretend like you don't remember. And like I said, that's disrespectful to that family. And the system's going to do what the system's going to do with you because I'm going to tell them I gave Michael an opportunity to come in here, take responsibility for his actions, and own up and explain to me why this happened. And he chose not to take it and looked me in the eye and told me I don't remember. And that's what I'm going to write, Michael. And you don't seem to think it'll make a difference what your intentions were going into that house." Lapnewski says, the dead is dead. DNA is DNA and garbage and going to hell everything. It's all coming. Trust me. If you don't think everything's not coming to me all at once, I can see the end of the light. I don't have any idea what this means. Anyway, Detective Chalmers interpreted this statement to be existential and pointed out to Lapnewski that his situation was a short-term problem in relation to eternity. Lapnewski responded, I've already told you, I sold my ass out. It's done. I don't even know. It doesn't really matter. Again, he's talking nonsense. Lapnewski tried to protest that he wasn't a violent guy. He acknowledged that he had episodes with his ex-wife, who had said he was physically abusive, but he challenged the detective to come up with any other violent incidents in his past. Detective Chalmers continued to try to give Lapnewski an out. He brought up that at the time of the murder, Lapnewski was essentially homeless, couch surfing with random friends and relatives. He reminded him that he had shoplifted some food and told an arresting officer he was desperate during the same month as Opal's murder. He suggested that maybe Lapnewski was impaired on drugs or alcohol, both of which Lapnewski said he was using at the time. Ron Chalmers said, quote, "Do you think you could have been so messed up that you didn't?" Lapnewski said, "Would I have? I don't know what to say. I would have woke up somewhere if I was all messed up like that. I don't know. I would have had to have been pretty effed up to go do something really retarded like that, to be honest with you. I've been pretty drunk, and about the worst thing I've ever done is drive." Lapnewski did admit that he would fight with his wife when he drank. He said, "She would like to beat me up, and I go to jail for it. That's what's funny." Chalmers says, yeah. Lapnewski says, "But she did catch a couple of them," I assuming meaning punches. When Detective Chalmers tried again to suggest that perhaps Lapnewski had possibly been grossly intoxicated and done things he otherwise would not do, Lapnewski said no, he did not believe alcohol was a factor. And Detective Chalmers pointed out that clearly Lapnewski remembered something bad had happened because he acted so nervous when the Pinellas investigators showed up at his door, even terming himself a suspect. Well, this whole thing went on for quite some time, more than 2.5 hours. Lapnewski continued to claim his innocence, protesting that he did not have a history of breaking into homes. Basically, he said, "I'm not a burglar, so clearly I didn't do this." Further, Lapnewski tried to throw his brother Charles under the bus, saying that he was the one who tended to break into homes. Charles did indeed have a record for burglary. Unfortunately for Lapnewski, Detective Chalmers said Charles had been excluded as being the source of any DNA in Opal's house. Lapnewski then wanted to know what DNA. Of course, the detectives would not tell him. They knew that if they told Lapnewski that they had found his hairs on Opal and her bed, he would just come up with some lie to explain how they got there. Instead, Chalmers proposed that they collect a new DNA swab to be 100% sure. Quote, "If this comes back as not being your DNA that we dug out of a trash can last summer up here in Waveland or Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, I will be the first one to call you and apologize. But don't wait for that phone call. Lepnewski replied, no, I don't suppose I'll be waiting for any phone calls for a while. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable. Well, I didn't kill nobody. Chalmers responds, well, maybe you didn't mean to kill somebody, Michael, but she died. Lepnewski said, yeah, somebody died and somebody's got my shit with them. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Chalmers says, Michael, this is not planted evidence. Lepnewski says, I'm not worried about if it's planted or not. I want to know what all's fucking going on. Chalmers says, you know what's going on, Michael. That's why you were worried about us coming back. Lepnewski says, this is what I know. I'm here and going to jail no matter what. It doesn't matter. I can't argue with your DNA stuff. I don't know. I didn't kill nobody. Chalmers says, you can't argue with the DNA, Michael. You can't. I've dug up DNA from 1987, and you have to understand her family's waiting for me to call. As soon as we're done, they're waiting for me to call because they would like to know why. Why her? What happened? That's what they want to know. For 36 years, Michael, they've been waiting, and you can give them that. Lepnewski says, and in 36 years, I'm him. I'm the only possible guy in 30. Then why didn't you come and get me in 1987? And this Detective Lane says, science evolves. Chalmers says, yeah, DNA didn't exist in 1987. Lepnewski says, figures. It was clear that Lepnewski understood that Chalmers was telling him if he cooperated, he might be treated more leniently. He said, quote, so I'd be helping myself if I said, hey, look, guys, on Tuesday, whatever, it just went bad. Everything went bad and this, that, and the other, and this is what happened. But then I would just be trying to fucking lie. And now I'm trying to protect and do this and that and the other, and now you're saying I'm lying. And you say you got my DNA, and I don't have a story for that. I gave you some more. There you go. I hope it's wrong. That's why I gave you some more. Please, test it. They had collected a buccal swab from him at this point, I should probably clarify. Lepnewski screwed up royally in one particular exchange. He said, I don't know how to make you understand I didn't kill these motherfuckers. Wait, MFers? Were their victims plural? Chalmers immediately seized on this. How many others are there, Michael? Lepnewski says, others? Chalmers says, killing women. How many others are there? How many other motherfuckers are there? Lepnewski says, I don't know. Chalmers says, so let's get back to how many, Michael. Wouldn't this be the time to get it all out? Lepnewski says, there's no how many. Chalmers says, because I got some other DNA cooking right now, Michael. I've got other cases that I'm working on. What's going to happen if in a week, a month, 2 months, the lab comes back with more of your DNA someplace else? Lepnewski says, I'd hope not. At one point, Lepnewski tries to point out that because he lived in the neighborhood, his DNA would be everywhere. Chalmers says, yeah, but you made it very clear. You still, as you sit here, say, I've never been in that house. I don't understand how my DNA could get there. Lepnewski responded by saying, I'm just trying to be honest. I'm going to pay for something I didn't do. Isn't this so nice? Isn't it? It's so nice. I will say this guy does throw out some pretty amusing nuggets. Amusing when you're on our side of the table, of course. Ron Chalmers said, it's not too late to tell the truth. I won't think any less of you. It won't make it worse. Everybody lies to us at first. Lepnewski says, it's already worse. Then he says, I never get out of anything. And Chalmers says, Michael, you've never even been to prison. And Lepnewski says, yay for me. And then Lepnewski says, see, I'm not getting why you've got me breaking into a house where there's people home to begin with. Chalmers says, Michael, don't ask me why you did what you did. I have no idea. Lepnewski says, I got that you lived on this street stuff, and I can see you putting that all together like that, but even if I was a thief, it's just dumb. Chalmers says, okay, Michael, you were dumb. Is that what you want me to tell you? Lepnewski says, obviously. And then he says, I don't break into houses. That's not my thing. I don't do that. I'm the guy that drinks too much and acts stupid in the middle of the road and gets thrown in jail for DUIs and I guess steals food. Chalmers says, I'll do whatever it is I can do for you. Lepnewski says, get that DNA tested and hopefully it's not mine. Chalmers says, okay, I promise you I'll have that tested. And then Detective Lane says, and where are we at then? Lepnewski says, I'm in jail forever and ever and ever. At another point, Lepnewski said, well, Florida's going to introduce me to the electric chair. That's for damn sure. And Chalmers says, I think you're being a little dramatic. Lepnewski says, no, you know what? The quicker the better. He goes on, now see, that's exactly what I was talking about. I'm telling you the truth. And then you want me to tell you that I did this. But for real, as far down the rabbit hole as I am right now, it's not going to make one or two different ways if I said the truth or the truth. Chalmers said, and you don't think the truth and taking responsibility for your actions has any impact on the journey? Lepnewski says, this whole hopeless situation. And Detective Lane says, yeah, you got to get past the hopeless. Lepnewski says, oh, I'm not past that. I'm fallen in the pit of hopeless. Detective Lane says, hopeless has been the story of your life. And Lepnewski agrees, yeah. And I brought myself up, and this time I can't get myself up. This time it is hopeless. This time my life caught up to me or whatever. Whatever's going on. Anybody. It doesn't matter if I was there or not. I got DNA there. It really doesn't. How the DNA got there can come from any mother. People that hated my guts. That's not hard to find if you go out and investigate that. There's plenty of people didn't like me that want to be dead. But I don't have an argument for something like this when everything's right there. It's hopeless. I'm done. I'm seeing the electric chair. That's all that it is, so it's a done deal. The interview came to an end. Lepnewski did not confess and instead acted as though he was being persecuted unfairly for something he didn't do, the story of his life.
Get caught in the holiday spotlight with Saks Off 5th, the season's best deals with up to 70% off McQueen, Versace, Valentino, Stuart Weitzman, and more. Wrap yourself in designer finds straight off your wish list. Your mission, outshine at every event and outsmart your budget. From entrance-making party looks to festive day-to-night styles, every holiday outfit is a conversation starter. Whether you're hosting or toasting, Saks Off 5th has all the must-haves to make your holiday lineup sparkle at prices that feel like a gift. Shop Saks Off 5th for everyone on your list with the ultimate gift guide to suit every style and budget. It's the only shopping accomplice you need this season. From stocking stuffers and cozy surprises to treats for yourself, gifting has never been so easy. With arrivals dropping weekly, holidays are the perfect time to score big. And if anyone asks how you pulled it off, just confess. You got it at Saks Off 5th. Visit SaksOff5th.com or a Saks Off 5th store near you today.
Black Friday at Abercrombie Kids is here with 40% off everything.
And iHeart listeners are getting an extra 15% off with code iHeartAF.
This is your time to shine and finish holiday shopping on sale. Shop in the app, online, and in stores.
40% off everything valid in stores and online November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in U.S. and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount. Use code iHeartAF to get an additional 15% off everything in stores and online at checkout. From November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in U.S. and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online.
Every story begins somewhere. For your child, it could begin with a Guardian bike, built right here in the USA, engineered for safety and designed for confidence. Kids of all ages are learning to ride in just one day. No tears, no frustration. It's why Guardian is America's favorite kids bike and the New York Times and Wirecutter's top pick 3 years in a row. This holiday season, give the gift that's safer, smarter, and built to last. Visit GuardianBikes.com to save up to 40% on all bikes, plus a free accessory bundle worth over $100.
So after Lepnewski's arrest, as I said, he was required to submit a buccal swab. Detective Chalmers submitted it to the FDLE lab for comparison to the hairs and evidence. All of the hairs collected in Opal's bedroom were tested. FDLE DNA analyst Vicky Bellino's report, dated August 2nd, 2023, stated that of the hairs tested from the nightgown, from the clump of hair on the bed, and from the fitted sheet on the bed, several yielded partial or complete DNA profiles. For each one, she gave a statistic illustrating how many times more likely that profile was to occur if the sample originated from Michael Lepnewski than from an unrelated individual. The numbers ranged from 65 million on the low end to 700 billion on the high end, the largest number the FDLE crime lab uses in its probability estimates. Several hairs that they tested yielded no interpretable results. Based on this report, a total of 8 hairs from 3 different locations within Opal's bedroom, 6 hairs from the clump of hair near the head of the bed, 1 hair from the fitted sheet, and 1 from the nightgown that Opal wore, all produced a partial profile with different statistical ratios which matched Michael Lepnewski's DNA. It's important to remember that 4 hairs had already been tested and yielded a DNA profile consistent with Lepnewski's based on the surreptitious DNA. Detective Chalmers' report reads, quote, based on all the hair DNA testing, a partial profile was developed from a total of 12 hairs that had been tested from 5 different locations in Opal Weil's bedroom. All 12 of those hairs match with different statistical ratios from 56 million to greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Michael Lepnewski than from an unrelated individual. Further, quote, 7 hairs from the clump of hairs, which were located near the head of Ms. Weil's bed, produced a partial DNA profile which is consistent with Mr. Lepnewski's DNA profile. The location of these hairs is significant, as they overlap the edge/top of her electric blanket and top sheet. The timing of when these hairs was deposited is consistent with when the murder occurred, as they appear to have been easily dislodged from the current overlap position if the sheet and blanket were pulled back to allow for an entry or exit into the bed when the sheet and blanket were pulled over Ms. Weil as she lay in the bed. One of the hairs from beneath the kitchen knife, which was located on Ms. Weil's bed, near the foot of the bed, on the side of the bed farthest from the door to the room, resulted in a partial DNA profile, consistent with Mr. Lepnewski's DNA profile. This knife is consistent in appearance with other utensils that were in the drawer that was left standing open in the kitchen. Based on the circumstances and positioning of the drawer, it is reasonable to believe the knife was involved in the commission of the murder and deposited on the bed contemporaneous to the murder. Just to seal the deal in anticipation of trial, Detective Chalmers wanted to get DNA from Lepnewski's deceased brother, Sean. Remember that Charles's DNA was already in CODIS. So although Lepnewski had told a lot of people that Charles was the one who liked to burgle homes, they knew it was not his hair in Opal's room. Because he is an absolute piece of garbage who refuses to hold himself accountable for anything, Lepnewski also suggested in several jailhouse phone calls that his brother Sean might be responsible for the murder since their DNA was similar as full siblings. So Detective Chalmers tracked down Sean's son and obtained a voluntary DNA sample, as well as from his biological mother. Testing on the samples ruled out him and his deceased father, Sean. As the expression goes, the buck stops here. Lepnewski was not going to be able to pass it to anyone else. So who is Michael Lepnewski? With a birth date of September 21, 1967, Michael Lepnewski was the oldest of three sons born to parents Michael Lepnewski Sr. and Christine Dola. Michael Jr. got along with his brother Sean, but he and his brother Charles apparently detested each other. Christine and Michael Sr. divorced, and in 1979, Sr. married a woman named Deborah who had 2 kids, and they had another daughter together. The family of 8 moved into the pink house on Opal Street on September 30th, 1980. As Lepnewski described it, the rowdy family did not fit in the neighborhood. Teens came and went at all hours, and it was chaotic, loud, and totally unstructured. Lepnewski and his stepmom Deborah began an affair when Lepnewski was 15, around the time Lepnewski dropped out of school after 9th grade. After the stepmom debacle, Lepnewski bounced around, living with his grandmother for a time, staying briefly with his Uncle Frank and Aunt Janet, and couch surfing off friends after his aunt and uncle kicked him out. Detective Chalmers interviewed Lepnewski's paternal uncle, Frank, who had taken Lepnewski in for a couple of months when he was about 16. Frank said they tried to help Lepnewski straighten himself out, but that he was a broken kid. Frank's opinion was that Lepnewski's biological mother was extremely crazy, as he put it, and Lepnewski was set up for failure at an early age. When they took Lepnewski into their home, he was already a train wreck who was deliberately disruptive and manipulative and tried to pit Janet and Frank against each other. Frank described Lepnewski as a conniver and said he was always scheming. Frank explained that after Lepnewski had sex with his father's wife, he thought he was a big man on campus and considered himself a Romeo, which made me gag. They finally asked him to leave their home, and they hadn't talked to him since. When he was 18, Lepnewski moved in with his buddy Charles P., who lived at 4577 51st Court in St. Petersburg. Lepnewski lived there with his buddy for quite some time. This address was a half-mile from Opal's, and Lepnewski listed that as his residence in jail intake paperwork after an arrest at age 19 in February 1987, the same month he is charged with killing Opal. And guess what? While living at his buddy Charles P.'s house, Lepnewski embarked on a 3-year affair with Charles's mother, also named Deborah. I don't know what it is with this guy and older women named Deborah. In this relationship, Lepnewski was known to be violent. After it ended, he moved to Mississippi in 1990. Lepnewski married a woman I'm calling Catherine in September 1991, and they had a son and daughter. He worked construction and remodeled homes. Detective Chalmers asked Lepnewski what kind of relationship he had with his kids. Lepnewski said, "They don't talk to me. None of the kids talk to me." Well, shows good sense. Physically, Lepnewski is a big dude. When he was arrested in 2023 for Opal's slaying, he was 6'4", 170 pounds. He still had the long hair that had been his downfall at the crime scene decades earlier. Detective Chalmers conducted a very long interview with Lepnewski's ex-wife, to whom he'd been married for more than 20 years. Catherine was a very smart cookie who had been on a pre-med track in college before she got sidetracked by Lepnewski. She and Lepnewski shared 2 now adult children together, and she had a daughter from a previous relationship when they met. On Friday, January 27th, Detectives Chalmers and Lane went to see Catherine at her home, in which she ran an in-home daycare center for a number of kids. She spoke with the detectives for about an hour. When they knocked on her door and told her they had arrested her ex-husband for a murder of a neighborhood woman when he was 19, Catherine was in shock. But not because Lepnewski was an angel. Quite the contrary. It was just that she was taken aback by the news that the father of her children was a killer. She said, "I'm really going to throw up." She asked who the victim was, and they told her. She said, "Oh my God, look, my hands are shaking." The detective said, "Yeah, we didn't mean to throw this on your lap like this." Catherine said, "He's a horrible person, y'all, horrible." "Why do you say that?" they said. Catherine said she met Lepnewski in 1990 when she was 19 and he was in his early 20s, and his mother was the manager of the apartment complex where Catherine lived in Bay St. Louis. His stepdad was the maintenance man. Lepnewski was sent to her apartment to fix her toilet, and after that he kept coming around, taking her and her nearly 2-year-old daughter to do errands and stuff. He was nice to them, she said. But then, one night, the cops came to his parents' apartment because they were arguing, and he was afraid the cops would learn that he was in violation of his probation in Florida. So he came to Catherine's door and insisted that she let him hide in her apartment. She was angry about this, but he seemed like he was trying to straighten himself out and get his driver's license back, which he'd lost because of too many DUIs. Then she got pregnant, and so she married him. Catherine described to the 2 detectives a 2-decade marriage filled with physical abuse by her husband. It started, she said, when he threw her across the room on their wedding night. She said Lepnewski was very volatile and would be set off into a rage by the smallest things. She didn't like drinking, and so he would drink before coming home and then would come home drunk. The next day, after he'd beaten her up, he would say, "Why do you make me be mean to you?" Catherine said, quote, "He was horrible. He beat the crap out of me. He tortured me for 23 years. And the only 2 things that ever came from him were my babies. They have not laid eyes on him in probably over 12 to 13 years. Catherine was very happy and relieved to hear that Lepnewski, whom she had not seen in over a decade, was locked up in jail and she was safe. She said she was so terrified of him that after she left him, she wouldn't leave the house. "See the scar here? See the ones on the side of my head, my wrist? He broke it. He beat the shit out of me. He lit me on fire. He threatened if I ever tried to take my kids from him or tell anybody, he would kill me. He's choked me so many times it's not even funny, to the point where I was unconscious." Catherine said she finally took the kids and left, heading out to California where her brother lived to get away from Lepnewski. But he followed her, got a job, and moved back in with her and the kids. Then in October of 1997, he put her in the hospital in Riverside County. What happened was Lepnewski was passed out drunk and started gagging as if he was about to throw up. Christine put a shirt over his face so he wouldn't puke on her rug, and he woke up and accused her of trying to smother him. Catherine said, quote, "He beat me so bad I was in the hospital for a week. That's why I wear glasses. I had a detached retina. He bit my arm to the point where there was a hematoma." She described it as one of the only times in her life that she prayed to die. Catherine managed to drive with one eye to her brother's house. When he took a look at her, her brother Ken grabbed a golf club, drove over to the house, and beat the crap out of Lepnewski with the club. Then he called the police and told them where to find his son-of-a-bitch brother-in-law. Lepnewski was arrested after this beating, and Catherine took the kids and moved back to Mississippi, where her father had left her a house. Again, Lepnewski followed her, also returning to Mississippi. She said when his mother died after a fall down the stairs, Lepnewski went off the deep end, getting 2 DUIs in 2 separate counties in one day. She said, "Y'all, they let him out. I don't know what kind of power he has over people, but he gets away with everything." Catherine said Lepnewski was never the same after his mother's death. They separated for good not long after that. As an aside, throughout this entire lengthy interview, Catherine was constantly interrupted by the kids she was taking care of. She would be in the middle of saying something about her ex-husband and would not miss a beat, all of a sudden saying, "Preston, stop that," or "Jackson, inside voice," or "Boys, I'm going to have to put you in a timeout." It provided a bit of comic relief in an otherwise very serious interview. At one point, Detective Lane said to Christine, "What a nightmare job trying to wrangle all these kids, man." I thought that was kind of hilarious. I mean, some people would say that the detective's job, seeing dead bodies, being exposed to dangerous situations daily, and encountering the worst of humanity, is the real nightmare. But he would rather do that than babysit 9 kids all day. Anyway, Christine related some pretty bad stories about Lepnewski. He left her and the kids sometimes for weeks at a time, and she always found out later that he was with another woman. Once he and a lover he had left with forged some checks and got arrested. She said he could wallpaper the bathroom with a number of DUIs he'd gotten. She also said he claimed he might have killed his brother Sean. Sean had died of an aneurysm, according to his autopsy, but Lepnewski admitted to slugging him in an argument and possibly bringing on the brain bleed. And Catherine said he insinuated that he'd killed his mother's domestic partner, a guy named Red, in August of 1998. Red and Lepnewski's mom, Christine, had apparently had an argument, and Lepnewski was convinced that Red pushed Christine down the stairs, causing the aneurysm that had killed her. That death was ruled an accident. Catherine said Lepnewski was incensed about it. Later, he said to her about his mom's boyfriend, Red, "You haven't seen him around, have you?" She said no. He said, "Well, he's fish food." He also told his brother Charles that he had thrown Red into a bayou. The detectives wanted to learn whether there were possibly any parallels between what Lepnewski did to his wife Catherine and what they had suspected he had done to Opal. They asked Catherine if Lepnewski had ever choked her, and she said yes, often with his hands. He would pin her down and choke her and use his thumbs to stick in her eyes. She was certain she had lost consciousness on one occasion in 2002 or 2003 because she came to find her kids standing over her looking worried. And she said, "And I know for a fact he's choked me hard enough before I've gotten petechiae in my eyes." She said she knew what that was because her mom was a nurse and she herself had been pre-med and still had all her medical books. Catherine said if Lepnewski didn't choke her, he'd hit her. Quote, "If I happened to be standing or trying to run from him or just get out the door, he would just curl his fist up and just rear back and punch me straight in the face, in the back, in the head, whatever he could get. And if I dropped to the ground, then he would just stomp me, kick and stomp and stomp and stomp. And I would try to roll, or he would just hit the back of my head and my back." Remember that the medical examiner believed that Opal had been stomped. Catherine related that once Lepnewski threw a beer bottle at her head and she needed 9 stitches to repair the damage. He once told her, "Never drink beer in a can because you don't have a weapon. If you've got a beer bottle in your hand, you've always got a weapon." In another incident, after she had obtained a restraining order, Catherine said Lepnewski lured her to his apartment to get a check for her that had come in the mail. He locked her in and raped her. Then he told her he was going to report her to the police and she would lose the kids because she was in violation of a court order she had obtained keeping him away from her. The investigators asked Christine about her wedding ring. Detective Chalmers said, "We suspect there's a second case that we can't prove, but our victims had their wedding rings taken. Did Michael, when he got married, did he give you a ring?" Catherine said no, her father gave her the money for the ring, but Michael had given her an anniversary ring in California. She promised to text a picture of it to the detectives. When she did, neither Opal's nor Eleanor's families recognized it. They asked whether Lepnewski ever told Catherine about breaking into houses and stealing stuff. She said no, but she told them about one time when Lepnewski seemed close to confessing something. She said one night, sometime in the early 90s, they were sitting on the truck tailgate, and Lepnewski was drunk. When he was drunk, she said, he liked to talk. He said, "You know I got demons." And Catherine said, "I see that clearly." I said, "You got mama issues too." He said, "You don't have any idea what it feels like to watch somebody die in front of you." Chalmers said, "What did you attribute that statement to?" Catherine said, "His past, something in Florida that I didn't know about and I honest to God didn't want to know about. I told you it made me sick to my stomach." Then they asked her if she ever knew Lepnewski to drink to the point that the next day he didn't remember anything, and she said absolutely yes. She mentioned that his favorite bar was called the Wayside on 54th, very near 56th Avenue North where Opal lived. She gave an example of one night when Lepnewski was blackout drunk. She was in bed sleeping with her baby daughter. He came home very drunk and started to get undressed, and she said, "Shh, the baby's in bed with me." Catherine said, "He sat down on the side of the bed and I heard the cigarette lighter go. I said, 'Mike, you know you can't smoke in here with these kids.' And he said, 'Well, I know you're going to divorce me, that you're done with me.' And I didn't say anything. And he said, 'Well, I figure.' And then at that point, I smelled the smoke and the flame was large. He had taken his work shirt off, put it on the side of the bed and lit it on fire. And he said, 'Well, I figure no kids, no child support.' He dropped it on the pallet on the floor in between the 2 sleeping kids." Catherine was able to grab the burning shirt and put it in the shower. She took the kids to a motel. The next day, not only did Lepnewski not remember the incident, he denied it, saying he would never do that. In a follow-up interview, Catherine told the detectives about a specific incident when Lepnewski was threatening her by phone. She refused to answer his calls. She said, "And you know what he did? This is crazy. He went out in the backyard and cut all my phone wires." Sound familiar? Catherine said that now she had time to get over the shock. She had no doubt that her ex-husband was capable of murdering someone. Living with him as long as I did, she said, he is absolutely bipolar. I could tell the way he would walk in the door who I was dealing with that night. I took him to doctors. I took him to therapists. I took him all kinds. Hey, boys, pick those up off the floor. I took him to several different places. They tried to help him. They offered him medications. They wanted him to do anger management. He wouldn't stay off the alcohol long enough for any of the medications to work, and some of them it actually made worse. So that was pretty much a moot cause. And I got tired of trying to fix somebody who didn't want to be fixed. I had 3 kids I was dealing with. I didn't need a 4th. And my last words were, if you're not going to help me, you're not going to hurt me. Have a good life. Yes, Catherine. It took Catherine a long time to get a divorce. Not because she didn't want one, but because Lepnewski stonewalled it. She said, I tried to divorce him repeatedly. He would either not show up at all, or he did show up and he showed up under some type of influence, whether he was high, drunk, whatever. And of course, you can't sign legal papers when you're in that state, so it would have to be postponed. This would go on and on. I ran out of money. I had nobody. It's just been me and the kids. And I'm telling you, he's going to tell everybody that how he put his kid through private school, and I'm sorry, I put your kid through private school. I put him through $25,000 a year college. I'm the reason he's a marine biologist. Now he's an oceanographer. I'm the reason the other one is a CPA. I'm the reason the other one, hands to yourself, has a master's degree in business management and owns not 1 but 2 of her own companies. You did none of that. Your involvement with those kids ended when you pulled your pants up. Catherine ended this rant with, you can tell him from me he sucked as a father. And in a prime example of that, Catherine learned from her now adult son that she shared with Lepnewski that he had been interacting with his father down at the fishing pier. The son was an oceanographer for the Stennis Space Center. He told her, I have to go down and take the salinity at the local pier on all the 3 coast counties twice a month. He, meaning his father, Lepnewski, and I have had several conversations. Mom, he had no idea who I was. He walked up to me and asked what I was doing and were the fish running. I actually started a conversation with him. I walked over and asked to see his license, chit-chatted with him, asked him what he was catching, what the tide was like, were there any size to the, I think he said trout that were coming in. He said we held an entire conversation. He had no idea who I was, none. And it made it a whole lot easier to close that chapter in my life. He's gone. I don't want anything to do with him. Catherine's divorce from Lepnewski was finalized in 2010. I'd say she is very lucky to have gotten out alive. Needless to say, she was thrown for a major loop with the whole development that the husband she had been married to for more than 20 years had actually murdered someone. It made her question herself and her choices. She asked rhetorically, how could somebody do something like that and then come off as somebody that I could ever possibly care about? I'm just questioning my whole life right now. And how did somebody so ugly and nasty have kids as beautiful as ours are that turned out to be such wonderful people? All very good questions. And an important reminder that the collateral damage wreaked by these killers does not extend just to the families of their victims, but to their own as well. By the way, the detectives asked Catherine about the elderly woman that they had found Lepnewski living with, the French citizen named Eliane K. They asked her if their relationship was possibly sexual. She said absolutely, in fact it was likely. She said she knew for a fact that this woman was paying for Lepnewski to live with her to help her, and had even taken him to France, where she was from. She said he always did have a mother complex. Remember that he had slept with his stepmother and his friend's mother. Speaking of his stepmom, Deborah, detectives talked to her too. She admitted having an affair with Lepnewski in 1985 when he was a child. She attributed Lepnewski's issues to his parents, and she said that he had beaten her up too. She claimed to know nothing about any murder Lepnewski committed in 1987.
Get caught in the holiday spotlight with Saks Off 5th, the season's best deals with up to 70% off McQueen, Versace, Valentino, Stuart Weitzman, and more. Wrap yourself in designer finds straight off your wish list. Your mission, outshine at every event and outsmart your budget. From entrance-making party looks to festive day-to-night styles, every holiday outfit is a conversation starter. Whether you're hosting or toasting, Saks Off 5th has all the must-haves to make your holiday lineup sparkle at prices that feel like a gift. Shop Saks Off 5th for everyone on your list with the ultimate gift guide to suit every style and budget. It's the only shopping accomplice you need this season. From stocking stuffers and cozy surprises to treats for yourself, gifting has never been so easy. With arrivals dropping weekly, holidays are the perfect time to score big. And if anyone asks how you pulled it off, just confess. You got it at Saks Off 5th. Visit SaxOffFifth.com or a Saks Off Fifth store near you today.
Black Friday at Abercrombie Kids is here with 40% off everything.
And iHeart listeners are getting an extra 15% off with code IHEARTAF.
This is your time to shine and finish holiday shopping on sale. Shop in the app, online, and in stores.
40% off everything valid in stores and online November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount. Use code IHEARTAF to get an additional 15% off everything in stores and online at checkout from November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online.
Every story begins somewhere. For your child, it could begin with a Guardian bike, built right here in the USA, engineered for safety and designed for confidence. Kids of all ages are learning to ride in just one day. No tears, no frustration. It's why Guardian is America's favorite kids bike and the New York Times and Wirecutter's top pick 3 years in a row. This holiday season, give the gift that's safer, smarter, and built to last. Visit GuardianBikes.com to save up to 40% on all bikes, plus a free accessory bundle worth over $100.
Detectives Chalmers and Lane also interviewed Charles Lepnewski after receiving a bunch of information about him. In early February, they received a phone call from a Washington woman who reported that Charles, who was using the name of his dead brother Sean for some reason, had been doing some work on her car when he made some very scary and concerning statements. Quote, Charles Lepnewski bragged that he knew people that could make someone disappear and stated he had a brother that was just arrested on February 3rd, 2023 in Florida for a cold case murder. Charles Lepnewski told this woman that his brother had murdered like 8 other people too. A friend of Charles's, named Candy, told Detective Chalmers that Charles told her that his brother Michael had said he killed several people. She also said that Charles disliked Michael, who had abused him when they were younger, possibly sexually. Candy was another witness who was side-eyeing Lepnewski's living arrangements with the elderly French woman, Eliane K. This is from Detective Chalmers' report. Quote, Candy told me that Michael would not allow her to speak with Eliane. I asked Candy why he would not allow her to talk to Eliane. Candy explained that she had caught on to Michael. Candy said Michael was abusive to Eliane and said Michael was using her for her money. Candy said Eliane feared Michael. Candy said Michael changed her bank accounts so Eliane could not access her money, end quote. I don't know what follow-up was done on this. It seems like it was a very good thing for this woman, Eliane, that Michael Lepnewski was arrested and removed from her home. On February 15, 2023, Detective Chalmers spoke with Charles Lepnewski. Charles said all he could tell me was Michael boasted that he had killed people. Charles told me he never listened to the stories Michael told and discounted them because Michael was a drunk. Charles said that the last time he was in Mississippi, Michael was crying and told him he had done bad things. Michael told Charles that he had killed his mother's boyfriend, Red, and thrown the body in the bayou. Detective Chalmers asked Charles flat out whether he had helped Michael break into Opal's home, and he denied it. Charles told me that Michael had mommy issues and always dated older women. He claimed that Lepnewski was abusive to the old woman he lived with, Eliane. One guy that detectives were eager to talk to was a man that they had seen while they were surveilling Lepnewski. After the officers interviewed Lepnewski at his home on January 26 and left, a man drove up to the house and spent about an hour visiting with Lepnewski inside. They learned that his name was Kenneth B. They talked to Kenneth, and he said he had been friends with Lepnewski since 1996, so he knew him very well. They asked him about Lepnewski's demeanor after the police had visited him that day, asking about a murder in Pinellas County. Kenneth said that Lepnewski had told him that a couple of detectives had come to his home and asked him a bunch of questions about a very old case from when he was a teenager. Kenneth described Lepnewski as being really concerned about the detectives asking him questions. Lepnewski was worried that the detectives were going to come back. This is a quote from the report. Kenneth told me that Lepnewski told him, I know they are going to come back and arrest me. Kenneth said Lepnewski seemed very nervous and volunteered that he had never seen him like that before. Kenneth even told his wife how weird Lepnewski was acting. When asked, Kenneth said that Lepnewski never mentioned killing anyone, but he knew that Lepnewski had been a bad alcoholic in the past and would become extremely belligerent when drunk. Okay, let's talk about Lepnewski's criminal record. Other than the multiple incidents of domestic violence and one possible child sex abuse case, it's filled with pretty banal transgressions. Lepnewski was arrested by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office on October 16, 1985, for stealing a 12-pack of Busch beer from the grab-and-go store located on 16th Street North in St. Petersburg. On October 25, 1986, Lepnewski and an associate were the subject of a traffic stop at State Route 686 and 49th Street North. Lepnewski identified himself to the Pinellas County deputies as Charles Lepnewski and provided a false date of birth. The men were with an 11-year-old girl who was listed as a runaway. Lepnewski was arrested for child abuse and obstructing. Those charges were ultimately dropped for unknown reasons. Lepnewski was arrested by the St. Petersburg Police Department on July 18, 1986, for driving with a suspended license. A Pinellas County Sheriff's Office report dated December 6, 1986, documented a Baker Act hold of Michael Lepnewski. Deputies documented that use of force was required to enforce the Baker Act at 4577 51st Court, the house that was only a half-mile from Opal's. Lepnewski wrote a note threatening suicide, citing relationship issues with his lover, his friend's mom, Deborah. In an incident just a week after Opal's murder, Lepnewski was arrested by the St. Petersburg Police Department on February 15, 1987, for shoplifting $5.56 worth of food from an Albertsons. He grabbed 0.67 pounds of Longhorn Colby cheese and 0.97 pounds of baked ham, stuffed the deli items down his pants, and tried to leave the store. The incident report indicates that Lepnewski was listed as transient, but he also listed the 4577 51st Court North address near Opal's. The report documents Lepnewski saying, quote, "I was hungry. I needed some food and a good place to sleep. My girlfriend kicked me out of the house several days ago. I have nowhere to go. I have no food, I have no money, and I'm desperate." The police report reflected that Lepnewski was in possession of a flashlight during this arrest, an odd thing to be carrying around. A week later, on February 28, 1987, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office documented a stolen wallet from a home at 4431 57th Avenue North, again, fairly close to Opal's house. The theft was reported to have occurred between February 14, 1987, and February 27, 1987. A credit card from the wallet was used at Skyway Jack's restaurant on Haynes Road in Pinella Park on the 28th. When arrested for this fraudulent use of the credit card, Lepnewski claimed he and his friends were mowing this wallet owner's lawn and found the credit cards on the ground outside. Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies learned Lepnewski had also used the stolen credit card the day before, on the 27th, to purchase a $43 drill at Brian Holton Hardware Store in Pinellas Park. This was on February 27th, the same month he killed Opal and possibly Eleanor Swift. You would think he would want to lay low, but apparently not. He was charged at that time with uttering a forged instrument, but avoided jail time. Then, on May 25, 1987, Lepnewski was arrested again by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. He was still living at Deborah P.'s address at 4577 51st Court North. Recovered in a police search of the residence were cocaine and drug paraphernalia, as well as a stripped-down stolen motorcycle hidden in closets and the attic of the house, a stolen bike, and pot plants growing on the property. On all these charges, Lepnewski pleaded guilty and again avoided jail time, getting probation and agreeing to restitution. Note that the location the motorcycle was stolen from was 0.8 miles from Maria Els's house at 8010 42nd Street North. Recall that Maria Els was believed to be a third victim of the unknown suspect, believed to have killed Opal Weil and Eleanor Swift. The next incidents on Lepnewski's record were an arrest for drag racing and driving without a license on January 27, 1988, and for disorderly conduct in 1990, for which I have no details. He served 5 days in the Pinellas County Jail for that offense. Lepnewski had a whole slew of DUIs, too many to go into, and we know he was arrested at least once for beating on his wife, Catherine. In a final report dating from 2020 from Waveland, Mississippi PD, Eliane K. reported a domestic disturbance at the house she allowed Lepnewski to live in, and he'd been there for 3 months at the time of the report. Quote, Eliane told the officers that she had asked Mr. Lepnewski to leave her home the day before this report. Mr. Lepnewski refused to leave and became irate. Eliane told the officers that Mr. Lepnewski poured gasoline on the floor inside the residence and threatened to light her and the house on fire while holding a lighter. Eliane, at 87 years old, ran to her neighbor's home at 502 Jeff Davis, end quote. When officers questioned Lepnewski about these charges, he admitted that he helped Eliane pay her bills. He agreed to leave her home, but obviously he came back. That's where Detective Chalmers and Detective Lane found him.
Get caught in the holiday spotlight with Saks Off 5th, the season's best deals with up to 70% off McQueen, Versace, Valentino, Stuart Weitzman, and more. Wrap yourself in designer finds straight off your wish list. Your mission, outshine at every event and outsmart your budget. From entrance-making party looks to festive day-to-night styles, every holiday outfit is a conversation starter. Whether you're hosting or toasting, Saks Off 5th has all the must-haves to make your holiday lineup sparkle at prices that feel like a gift. Shop Saks Off 5th for everyone on your list with the ultimate gift guide to suit every style and budget. It's the only shopping accomplice you need this season. From stocking stuffers and cozy surprises to treats for yourself, gifting has never been so easy. With arrivals dropping weekly, holidays are the perfect time to score big. And if anyone asks how you pulled it off, just confess. You got it at Saks Off 5th. Visit SaksOff5th.com or a Saks Off 5th store near you today.
Black Friday at Abercrombie Kids is here with 40% off everything.
And iHeart listeners are getting an extra 15% off with code IHEARTAF.
This is your time to shine and finish holiday shopping on sale. Shop in the app, online, and in stores.
40% off everything valid in stores and online November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount. Use code IHEARTAF to get an additional 15% off everything in stores and online at checkout. From November 24th, 2025 to December 1st, 2025 in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online.
Every story begins somewhere. For your child, it could begin with a Guardian bike, built right here in the USA, engineered for safety and designed for confidence. Kids of all ages are learning to ride in just one day. No tears, no frustration. It's why Guardian is America's favorite kids bike and the New York Times and Wirecutter's top pick 3 years in a row. This holiday season, give the gift that's safer, smarter, and built to last. Visit GuardianBikes.com to save up to 40% on all bikes, plus a free accessory bundle worth over $100.
Detective Chalmers looked into allegations several people had made that Lepnewski claimed to have killed his mother's boyfriend, Red, because he believed Red had killed his mom. He was able to determine that Red was William Brooks, Jr. He had died of a heart attack in 2014 while in hospice care. There were no suspicious circumstances surrounding Red's death, and no one had thrown Red into a bayou. Lepnewski had made up the whole thing. Once Lepnewski had been cuffed, a Pinellas County Sheriff's press office video informed the public of the arrest in the 1987 cold case murder of octogenarian Opal Weil. Fox 13 News interviewed Tracy Crawford, Opal's grandniece, who remembered visiting her great-aunt 3 times a week with her parents. "I was elated when I found out that he was arrested," she said. "I know the rest of my family was as well. There was a big cheer, but also it brought back memories of her murder all over again. Having her gone was just a huge tear in our family fabric. I miss her to this day. It seems like just yesterday that she was here, and now she's gone." Tracy referenced the hairs found at the scene used to identify Lepnewski. She said of her great-aunt, quote, "She fought and she fought to the very end, and she got a lot of DNA. I'm looking forward to him being sentenced and brought to justice," she said. She told Tampa Bay ABC 28, quote, "After 36 years, he's been able to walk this earth. He's been able to breathe air, something my aunt didn't get the luxury of doing, and I hope that he's man enough to stand up and confess to what he's done." Well, he was not. Lepnewski waived extradition from Mississippi to Florida. On January 31st, 2023, he was transported and booked into the Pinellas County Jail. He was charged with first-degree murder in an information filed on February 21st, initiating his prosecution. He was held on no bond. He was indicted for first-degree murder in March 2023 by a grand jury. He pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder at his April arraignment. The case was going to trial. While Lepnewski was stewing in his jail cell, he talked to pretty much everyone who would listen, and even some who wouldn't. And one of his cellmates, a man named Joey Walker, who was awaiting trial for aggravated stalking, ratted him out. Walker sent a letter in early February 2023 to the state's attorney's office, claiming that Lepnewski told him that 36 years earlier, he killed a woman off 56th Avenue North. Walker also wrote that Lepnewski said he killed other people, but didn't provide him with any details about those victims. So Detective Chalmers went to talk to Walker. He told him that he knew that the case had received a significant amount of media coverage, and he would only be interested in information that had not been made public. Walker claimed not to have seen anything in the media about the case, and said the information he had came directly from Lepnewski. He said that about a week after being placed into his cell in early February, Lepnewski was sitting on his bunk and began to cry. He said He'd been arrested for murdering an elderly woman who lived a couple of houses away from where he had lived in the Lealman area in 1986. Specifically, the murder occurred in the area of 43rd Street and 56th Avenue North near some railroad tracks, which was correct. Lepnewski said the crime happened 36 years ago and he, quote, messed up and left fucking hairs behind. Walker asked Lepnewski if he did it and told him that he could tell him. Lepnewski shook his head and mumbled yes. Lepnewski said it was a home robbery that had gone bad. Lepnewski believed his brother, Charles, had snitched on him. And Lepnewski said that police told him they'd been watching him for months, which led to matching his DNA. Detective Chalmers asked Walker if Lepnewski said he had taken anything. Walker said he did not mention it. Lepnewski told him they said the victim was strangled, but said he hadn't done that with an eye roll. Walker interpreted his remark as sarcastic. Walker went on to say that Lepnewski told everyone in jail he was a crazy motherfucker that had killed people before. There were a couple of other tidbits from the jail. A Donald Lunsford also shared a cell with Lepnewski. He seems to have been moved in after Lepnewski had time to adjust to his situation. Now, Lepnewski was fully denying his guilt and had read the arrest warrant affidavit and the allegations against him. He talked about the case to Lunsford quite a bit, focusing on the hairs police had found at the scene. He had even looked up the definition of the word clump used throughout the charging document. Lepnewski told his cellmate that the hairs could have come from anywhere. Lepnewski said he lived on that block when he was younger and that hair comes and goes. Lepnewski didn't provide much information that wasn't in the affidavit, but he did imply that the knife found on the floor in Opal's bedroom had come from outside the home and said it had not been used on the victim. He said that if he committed the murder, he would not have taken the time to strangle Opal. He would have used a different method, presumably one more efficient. But one thing he told his cellmate Lunsford that was not in the affidavit was that the murderer had left the residence via the back door. That was not something that was public knowledge. On another note, according to Lunsford, several jail inmates told Lepnewski that he should cut his hair, but he refused, saying he liked his hair. Lunsford said that Lepnewski would constantly poll complete strangers and tell them his story, looking for people to support him. Lunsford said their jailhouse group would continuously tell Lepnewski to shut up and stop talking about his case. Finally, in a jailhouse call with an unidentified person, Lepnewski ran over the homicide scenario from a what-would-he-do hypothetical standpoint. He said, "You've got a broken door in the back. I would have walked into the house and armed myself, baseball bat, a knife out of the kitchen, something like that. So in case somebody popped out, I could just go," and made a gasping sound. "Wouldn't you have?" In other words, exactly what happened. Lepnewski was assigned a public defender and quickly went through several of them, at least 3 by my count. Defendants, of course, are entitled and expected to participate in their own defense. But Lepnewski seemed unable to be reasoned with about how defense counsel normally operates, and the fact that a defendant is not entitled to demand a meeting with the judge directly to tell him or her all about how innocent the defendant is. Lepnewski also had unreasonable expectations about the pace of trial prep. He was convinced his defense attorneys were doing nothing for him, and he decided to take matters into his own hands. In the 2.5 years he has spent in jail awaiting trial, he read law books nonstop and then used the principles he learned about to try to get his case dismissed. In short, he made himself a nuisance. He bombarded the court with motions and correspondence. The court record contains at least 15, maybe 20, very lengthy motions and other filings written by Lepnewski himself in handwriting. I didn't see a single motion to dismiss filed by an attorney on his behalf. He did them all on his own, and it must have driven his defense lawyers absolutely bonkers. It's actually pretty funny because Lepnewski attempted to emulate the formal, legalistic language of sample motions and correspondence to the court that he must have found in law books in the jail library. I'll give some examples. On June 11, 2024, Lepnewski filed a motion to dismiss his counsel. He used a fill-in-the-blank motion form to demand that the court dismiss his attorney, whom, he says, failed to provide a forensic specialist to provide the defendant with all information that is, quote, invaluable in determining the inadequacy of the science behind the opinion testimony of the state, end quote. He accuses his counsel of postponing court dates without including his input or explaining the decisions, which undermined his constitutional rights guaranteed by the federal government by the 5th, 6th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. He claims his lawyers violated his rights to due process by refusing to allow him to speak at hearings and by not being available to him at all times. He cites misfeasance of public office and infliction of emotional distress, among other things. The motion is rambling, nonsensical, paints Lepnewski as the victim, and illustrates that he believes his attorney's job is to get him out of jail ASAP. In June of 2025, he filed a 9-page handwritten motion in limine, seeking to exclude the, quote, prejudicially and wrongfully obtained testimony of a, quote, jailhouse snitch, whose eliciting of information from Lepnewski he claims was a violation of his rights and, quote, deprivation of his life, liberty, and character. In the argument section, he cites several cases he claims would support the exclusion of the testimony under the exclusionary rule and the legal doctrine of the fruit of the poisonous tree, which is not applicable here. In December of 2024, he filed a motion to suppress the physical evidence, in which he sought the exclusion of, quote, all hairs combined into DNA profiles, which give false representation of DNA facts, end quote. He specifically cites the exclusion of all hairs, quote, innocuously transferred to harmless, innocent daily activities, such as daily walks, shopping, restaurants, daily visits from friends and family, end quote. He wrote, quote, the defendant had no choice in where he was raised, and once hair is removed, it may be transferred from one place to another, and cites Jackson v. State. He claims his prosecution is malicious and the evidence against him has been manipulated and manufactured. In all these motions, he uses flowery legalese, such as to wit, wherefore, and pursuant to. Also submitted to the court were letters of character written by an acquaintance of Lepnewski's from Waveland, Mississippi, a retired U.S. Navy captain whose last name was Gallagher. Gallagher writes, the three of us who knew him best were shocked and could not believe he murdered anyone. Michael does not lie, cheat, or steal. He helps whoever needs it. We have used him around our house and yard for 18 years. He watches only nonfiction TV shows that teach something useful. Michael has been in jail for almost 3 years awaiting trial. The delay has violated his rights. He wanted a speedy trial. He believes strongly that due diligence has not been done on his behalf. Gallagher attached a letter to the court written by Lepnewski, which says in one massive run-on sentence the following gobbledygook. Quote, as I've exhausted every avenue within my limited ability, I humbly request a fair and unbiased authority to impartially make a reasonable investigation into the wrongful arrest of myself based on prosecutorial misconduct and combined effect of Pinellas County detectives to fraudulently represent evidence that reflects a poorly handled police investigation and corrupt, manipulated, contaminated evidence collected after, on 2 occasions, non-law enforcement officials, unwitnessed, plundered the 1987 crime scene and further supported the corrupt practice of a hand-picked defensive attorney who is in line with the state's corrupt agenda and morally refuses an ethically zealous defense based on evidence and facts and clearly lacking thoroughness and commitment while refusing to abide to the oath of office and ethics and to include myself in my case decision process or to comply with any of my legitimate requests. Phew. You get the idea. Lepnewski is adamant that he is being railroaded, set up, and wronged in a giant conspiracy in which everyone in power is against him. I'm certain he did not endear himself to the judge by citing multiple canons in the Florida Code of Judicial Conduct pertaining to ethical obligations of judges. And he spews legal principles and concepts without really understanding them or their applicability or lack thereof to his case. For example, he writes, quote, I hope to avoid becoming a collateral issue of hypothetical or imaginary implied intention in response to allegations of contempt practiced by officers of the court, my lawyers, and law enforcement, while still trying to prevent the unintentional appearance of reciprocal retribution for the malicious attack on life, liberty, and lying under oath justified by the misrepresentation of documented facts, specifically interpolated with the implied intention to cause irreversible damage to reputation, character, and misdirected amenity of the alleged defendant, me. If you're thinking, this makes no sense, it's not just you. It makes no sense. Basically, the 21-page letter goes on to charge that the evidence against him was manipulated, the hairs got there by innocuous transfer, there was a shoddy investigation, he wasn't provided with exculpatory evidence as required by Brady v. Maryland, and his lawyer, whom he accuses of moral turpitude for being a pawn of the state, isn't doing anything about it. He rambles on nonsensically about how just because you've never seen a baby pigeon doesn't mean they don't exist. I can just imagine the judge reading this and thinking, this guy is a loony. As for me, what chafes me about Lepnewski is not that he expresses not one iota of remorse. I've come to expect that. Rather, it's his palpable sense of entitlement, his conviction that he is being wronged, that he is the victim. This episode's going to end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Lepnewski's trial is scheduled to start on December 8th, just a couple of weeks from now. I don't usually cover cases like this until the trial has concluded because Lepnewski must be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But these episodes are already long enough and lay out all the evidence the state had compiled against Lepnewski as of January 2024. I think it's possible that in the nearly 2 years since that time, the state has gathered additional evidence against the defendant. But even if they haven't, I believe the plethora of hairs linked by DNA to Lepnewski and the location and circumstances in which they were found at Opal's crime scene, given his denial of ever entering the home, will likely be enough to convict him. I will do an update episode for you after the trial concludes to let you all know what happens. Also, I will be very curious to see whether the trial mentions the Eleanor Swift case. From what I saw in the case file materials I was provided, the cases are strongly believed to be connected, but clearly the Pinellas County authorities did not have enough evidence to charge Lepnewski. I am really hoping we will see some justice for Eleanor as well. After nearly 39 years, Opal Weil's homicide case is heading to trial thanks to IGG. And if you are one of the bad guys, they are coming for you. Thanks for listening to this episode of DNA ID. Before you leave, please let me tell you about some important things related to the show. If you'd like to support this podcast, and in the process, get access to early and ad-free episodes, as well as bonus content like crime scene photos, you can sign up for a Patreon subscription for only $5 a month by heading over to patreon.com/DNAID. Of course, you're welcome to contribute more than $5 a month. We rely on Patreon funds to pay for the original source materials I use to research each episode. If Patreon isn't your thing, you can also show your support with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts. It costs just $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. Your AbJack Insider subscription will give you the same benefits for not only DNA ID, but for all of the shows on the AbJack network, like Killer Communications and Campus Killings. Head over to Apple Podcasts and find the DNA ID page or look for the AbJack network to get started. If you're on social media, we'd love to interact with you there. DNA ID is on every major social media platform. Search your favorite platforms for DNA ID Podcast to find us. We also have a YouTube channel, and our website is dnaidpodcast.com. You can find links to all of these anytime in our show notes. If you need to reach the show, contact us by emailing dnaidpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, if you want to pick up some fun DNA ID merch and represent the show, visit the store at www.customizedgirl.com/s/DNA ID podcast. DNA ID is researched, written, and hosted by me, Jessica Betancourt. It's produced by me and Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Music by Connor Betancourt.